You didn't seriously think the NFL was going to stop at 17 games, did you? Welcome everybody to JG9 News, where we talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jared Gare9, representing the 904 from the 602, and today we are talking about the report that came out from Pro Football Talk this weekend at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis that makes it seem like an 18th regular season game is coming sooner rather than later. The NFL had 14 regular season games up until the 1978 season. When they went to 16, it stayed at 16 games for a long time, about a 40-year period, before going to the 17-game format that we have now in 2021. And it looks like this 17-game format is not for long, because once the CBA expires in March 2030, so probably 2031 when this would take effect, we're going to get an 18th game. It is coming sooner rather than later, barring anything crazy. According to a report from Pro Football Talk, the push to 18 regular season games hasn't been abandoned. The first hint of it came when Browns general manager Andrew Berry explained that Cleveland and other teams are proposing a delay of the trade deadline by 14 days in anticipation for a further expansion of the regular season. In talking to folks after that, I mentioned Berry's plan with the anticipation of another game. The reaction was basically, yeah, that's coming. It likely won't come until the next labor deal, and the league will likely have the same determination then that it had 4 years ago, when it was clear that the league wanted an extra game badly enough to lock out the players like the NFL did in 2011. So ready or not, here it comes, 18 regular season games. Now, we can debate whether 18 games is the way to go, whether it's too many, whether it dilutes the regular season. That's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is I want to explain how the 18th game would work and what proposals could be on the table if and when the NFL decides to go to an 18th game. Again, it's not happening this year. It's happening next year. Probably 2031 is when this would take effect at the absolute earliest, but there are some options that the NFL will consider when it comes to the 18th game. One of them is that you play the inverse opponent for your AFC division. As an example, the AFC South this year plays the AFC East in its entirety, so they would play either the AFC North or the AFC West and just play the inverse opponent of that. You're already playing an opponent that you're matched up in the standings against, so the first place team there plays the first place team in another division, so the Texans, who won the AFC South, will play the Kansas City Chiefs, who were first place in the AFC West. Under this format, the Texans would also play the last place team in the AFC West, but I don't see this happening. So I'm not even going to consider this as a legitimate and valid option for the NFL to consider, because it would lead to a lot of repeat matchups. Ticket revenue could go down significantly because of crap matchups and the same teams but far away. Now, you might be saying, okay, well, divisional games always get good ticket sales. They get good hype. Giants, Eagles, for example. Those always sell really well. Those are always interesting matchups for the fans involved. Yeah, but it's a bit different when the Giants and Eagles are playing every year in the division versus a team far away like the Giants and, let's say, the Arizona Cardinals. It could be very, very different in terms of a ticket sales standpoint, in terms of an interest standpoint. I'm not sure the ticket revenue would be all that there if you're playing the same team every single year. On top of that, and most importantly, it would create an uneven balance. You have 13 conference games, 5 out-of-conference games. Some teams would have more conference games at home than others. That would be unfair. That would be murky in terms of the tiebreakers. Determining how each team gets 9 home games and 9 road games would be extremely tough as well. So I don't see this as an option. So in all likelihood, it's going to be one of two options for the NFL to consider when it comes to the 18th game. One of them is what I like to call the inverse option. So if you're an AFC team, you're just playing the inverse of whatever NFC division you're playing as that 17th game. As an example, in 2024, the NFC East plays the AFC South for the 17th game. So the first place team in the AFC South, the Houston Texans, plays the first place team in the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys. Second place team, the Jaguars, plays the second place team, the Eagles. How this 18th game would work is that you play the same division, but you just do the inverse. So what that would mean is that the first place team in the AFC South, the Houston Texans, plays the fourth place team in the NFC East, the Washington Commanders. The second place team, the Jaguars, plays the third place team, the Giants. You get the idea. I have it on the screen of what this would look like for 2024. It is super easy for the average fan to follow. It makes it so that exactly 1/3 of your season is against your division. 1/3 is against other conference teams, and 1/3 is against the opposing conference. It's nice and clean. It would make the tiebreaker super easy to follow. The other nice thing about this system, aside from the fact that it's pretty even in terms of strength of schedule across the board, it also gives teams a chance to host a team more than once every 8 years, which is a massive flaw with the current system. Here's the problem right now. The AFC gets game number 17 at home in odd number years, and the NFC gets game number 17 at home in even number years. Here's the problem with that. The AFC South will always host the NFC West at home under game 17. 2023, they did it. 2027, they'll do it. 2031, they'll do it. And it could lead to a scenario where the Jaguars play the 49ers in 2021 in Jacksonville, 2023 in Jacksonville, 2025 in San Francisco, but 2027 in Jacksonville, 2029 in Jacksonville, and 2031 in Jacksonville. You're telling me 5 times in a 6-year stretch they're going to play a game between the two teams at the same stadium and the same location? That is a pretty massive flaw with the current system, but the 18th game, the inverse game, can potentially fix that. It could lead to some more interesting matchups from a ticket standpoint. The con, it could lead to a lot of bad matchups, though. Look at the matchups here between first-place teams and last-place teams. You have 8 added games where it's first place against last place. Aren't really any games that are going to be super exciting from a neutral fan standpoint, from a primetime standpoint, in terms of, I have to put this game on primetime. I mean, not counting Packers-Jets because of the Aaron Rodgers intrigue. But other than that, there aren't really any games that really move the needle from a TV standpoint, from a primetime game perspective, or a national 425 game perspective. So because of that, they might not go with that option. I think it makes the most sense. But another option on the table is option B, which is you play the same opponent for the other conference division you play next year. As an example here, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the AFC South, they played the entire NFC West in 2021. They played the entire NFC West in 2025. So in 2024, you would just play the NFC West, whatever team you matched up against. Here's how it would look. First place team plays first place team. So the 49ers play the Texans, Rams play the Jags, second, third, Seahawks with the Colts, fourth, Cardinals, Titans. Now the pro with this, you get some really enticing matchups at the top. The real pro that the NFL has to really like about this, it likely ensures a Super Bowl rematch every single year. As an example, the Kansas City Chiefs under this system, the only way they would not be playing a rematch is if they took on a wild card in the Super Bowl or an NFC East team. They're already playing the San Francisco 49ers as part of the 17th game in 2024. But if they did play the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl, which they should have before the Lions just completely choked it away in the second half, that wouldn't be a rematch under the current system with 17 games. But under 18 games and this proposal, you could absolutely have that happen. The obvious con, though, even though there are some great matchups, you get those first place against first place games, which will really intrigue the TV networks and will really increase ratings. The con is that strength of schedule would be absolutely insane and would be kind of unfair. Look at the first place teams. There are 7 other first place teams. You'd have to play 6 of them. 1/3 of your schedule is nothing but first place teams. And it would be super easy for last place teams, relatively speaking. Look at a team like the Cincinnati Bengals. 9-8, came in last place in their division. They get Joe Burrow back, a very good team in their own right. And you're telling me 1/3 of their schedule is going to be against last place teams? It could be very unfair from that perspective in terms of strength of schedule. Very easy for last place teams, very hard for first place teams. You can increase parity. It makes it a more topsy-turvy league on a year-to-year basis under the system. But from a competitive and a fairness standpoint, I'm not sure that's the way to go. Having said that, I'd be very surprised if the 18th game is not one of these two options, where it's either the inverse of whatever division you're playing, or you're playing the same opponent that you matched up against for just a random division in the opposing conference. One of those two seems like the way to go. Personally, if it were me, I would take the inverse option. It's easier to follow in terms of no guesswork based on what division you're actually playing. It's pretty self-explanatory what division you're going to be playing. It's very easy in the sense that, okay, the Jaguars play the NFC East, in 2022. So 2024, we're going to play 2 teams from that division versus trying to guess, okay, do they play the second place team in this division? Do they play them in this division? This division? How does it work? Which division are we playing? Which division are we not playing? How are we doing this? I'm not sure. And then which game is at home? Which game is on the road? I think the inverse option is easier for the average NFL fan to follow from a matchup standpoint, and it is just more fair from a strength of schedule standpoint, so that you're not unfairly punishing first-place teams by having them play an absolute gauntlet of a schedule for the following season. But what are your thoughts on the 18th game? How do you think the 18th game will work if and when the NFL decides to do it? Do you think they will go to 18 games? And if so, do you like the idea of going to 18 games? Do you think it's too much, too little, just right? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And that's going to do it for this episode of JG9 News. Be sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out my main channel, JaguarGator9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, this is JaguarGator9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.